This is Gesher, the podcast that's bridging the gap between the Jewish and evangelical Christian communities with conversations that matter. Here's your host, Ty Perry, with the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to this episode of Gesher. I'm delighted to have these conversations, and I'm especially glad to have be in conversation again with my friend Shlomi Bennett of Jewish Frontline. Jewish Frontline is a grassroots movement centered on unapologetic Jewish visibility and continuity. His work challenges erasure while helping build confident, future-facing Jewish communities. And Shlomi, if we've ever needed those, we need them now. So welcome to Gesher.
Hey, thank you for having me back on. I really appreciate being back on here. Ever since we started doing these episodes, I really have felt it's a real dopamine release, you know. But I enjoyed so much that I decided to start doing my own podcasting a little bit, and been doing a show called Out of Exile. This has been a great opportunity to get back into the rhythm of things, because I haven't had the time to do any episodes over there. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate being here.
Well, definitely, Shlomi. It's been a busy time, and people are missing our conversations because I was telling you before we went on the air that when I speak at churches, I have people come up to me and they say, hey, I love your podcast, and I've been listening to the conversations with Shlomi. I love them. I had a friend at church just last week. He texted me and he said, where's the Shlomi Ty podcast? I want to hear these conversations. So
I love it.
We're in demand, I guess. But we need to figure out how to monetize this.
Yeah.
So,
we've got sponsors on here.
That's right. Well, Shlomi, today our topic is anti-Semitism across the spectrum, and the spectrum being the political spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have seen for decades, anti-Semitism, I would say, kind of on the fringes of both the far left, the far right.
Yeah. And
there's lots of theories about why this is, but what we have seen in the wake of October 7th, the attack in Israel, is that there has been a shift where that is no longer a fringe issue. It's becoming mainstream,
right,
on both the right and the left.
Absolutely.
So we want to talk about that, because this isn't, and I this is near to my heart, because, you know, I love your people, and so does Friends of Israel, and it just angers me, frankly, to see some of our fellow Americans who are turning on your people. And they're evidently ignorant of the fact that so much of our country and Western civilization is based on the gifts of the Jewish people to the world.
Right.
But anyway, that hasn't stopped them. So we want to talk about that today. But I want to back up just a little bit when we're talking politics, because I mean, we've had some great conversations you and I have about certain issues, but I don't really know exactly where you would place yourself on the political spectrum. So why don't we talk a little bit about that for each of us? So you go ahead. Where on the political spectrum would you plot yourself, and how did you get there? So how did little Shlomi, little boy Shlomi, get to the adult Shlomi with a political consciousness?
All right. So, I mean, throughout my short history, I've been all over the political map.
Okay.
Growing up in an Orthodox family, Orthodox Jews are historically more right-leaning.
Mm-hmm.
We were a Republican house. My parents voted for Bush, and that was that.
W. Bush?
Yeah. And so, so I carried that into my teen years, but then going into my rebellious years, I was calling myself an anarchist. Yeah. And where I was just like, I mean, it ties more into my personal history, where I just started questioning everything as a teen, and so I was questioning religion. I was questioning politics. I was questioning every system that I was introduced to. And I was just relearning it all. So at that point, I was quite literally an anarchist. I said, burn it all. we need a new system, or I don't understand this one, or how I fit in it. And I kind of, as things moved on, I was involved in different advocacy work. And so I started, I considered myself kind of left leaning for a while,
What kind of advocacy, generally speaking, would that have been that you were involved in?
So actually, I was involved with supporting victims of sexual abuse.
Okay.
Helping them face their attackers, their abusers, and kind of advocate for them and just support them while they went through the process of holding their abusers accountable. And it was I didn't do it for a long time. I did it for a couple of years, but we helped put away a couple of sick people, and it was and there was actually one classmate of mine from elementary school had moved to Israel and moved out and had reached out to me and had told me that he had gone through some things, and he basically told me everything. And but he had started a process filing police report here in Michigan, and but then he went to Israel, so it kind of stalled out, and the detectives never finished getting everything they needed to follow through. So nothing ever really happened. And unfortunately, shortly after he told me all this stuff, he was in the IDF, and he went off base for a dentist appointment. He went missing, and they found him later in a storm drain. But he had his firearm with him, so I'm not sure exactly what happened. But it was really unfortunate, and he was unfortunately someone who never really saw his justice served, and yeah, so that was kind of, I wish I could remember the timeline better. I can't remember if that was like what pushed me to do it more, or what actually got me to stop, where I was like, okay, I can't,
Yeah.
keep doing
That
it.
was
It's
kind
like,
of in your time of
so
also
that was,
being left of center anarchist.
Yeah. And what pushed me more. So where I am right now, and I think a lot of people who have been following me lately kind of wonder this themselves. I would have to say, if we had to label it, I would have to say libertarian, because I believe, I believe in traditional values, but I also believe in, self-agency, and people should be able to make their choices, do what they want to do. If you're not hurting other people, then, you should be free to live your life the way you want to. And, and then the choices that you make with that freedom is what defines you as a person. But we should have the ability, that's literally what God gave us free will for, to be able to make those choices and to choose right.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to have their own interpretation of what's right and what's wrong, and what's the way to do it. But I believe that if we want to see true freedom, then we can't, then we need to be socially liberal, and we could be economically, conservative.
Okay, sure. No, I appreciate you sharing. I figured, I knew you were not a lefty.
No.
But yeah, well, for myself, I didn't go through probably the rebellion that you did. I grew up in a conservative home. I remember my grandfather had Rush Limbaugh on all the time.
Yeah.
Like I'd listen, I'd heard that. So that probably affected my political development to a degree. What really started me down the path of, and I would say I'm conservative.
Yeah.
That I think, by the way, I think there's a distinction between conservative and right wing.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's lost on some even in politics today. But so I would be conservative. And I know that's a shock to you. If you could see right now, audience, I've got a Ronald Reagan poster on my wall. So that kind of tells you where I'm at. But it was actually through just being kind of nerdy and reading a lot of Reagan, reading the history of some of the conservative movement, and then just interacting with some of the, big political issues, particularly social, but also fiscal.
Yeah.
And kind of coming to that idea of, free markets, and which I want free markets. Now, where you and I would probably disagree would be, as being a libertarian, is I would say I believe in liberty, but ordered liberty. And so I would see there's certain things where the state has an obligation to intervene in. But that's for another.
Okay, fine. I was going to ask for an example. Okay.
Well, I would say certainly for me, there are certain issues like, marriage, the definition of marriage, where that is pre-state. That's something that marriage isn't instituted by governments, and yet it is something that has to be recognized by governments.
Yeah.
And so that would require, I would say, morality to be brought to bear on that. And so that would require judgments, not, a judgment on what is morally right, what is morally wrong. I could do the same with abortion. And I know you can't paint libertarians with one brush. Right. So we could talk about that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I am coming from. So I'm really glad, you've been on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
So you see, you could probably understand the impulses of the left maybe more than I could.
Right.
But let's talk about what we're seeing. So we're both right of center, and yet we could. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I do want to say though, like especially after having kids, I have definitely fallen further right on that spectrum, where it's like people who don't have children, I can't really like take their opinions within politics and policy and stuff like that too seriously, because they're being way too short-sighted for for the way I think about things. You know?
So when you have children, you immediately have an investment in the future,
right,
and an interest in how it's governed. Yeah. Well, let's talk about what we're seeing. So it's no secret that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism has long been evident on the left.
Yeah.
And we saw this especially in the days immediately following the October 7th attack. So let's talk a little bit about that before we move to a little closer to home for us on the right of center.
Yeah.
So on the left, what are we seeing right now as in terms of manifestations of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism? Do you put the two together? Talk to us a little bit about that.
So, yeah. Anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism, but they don't have to be explained. Like, anti-Zionism is just as repulsive as anti-Semitism in it of itself. So we don't have to explain. We shouldn't have to explain the fact that yes, being anti-Zionist is innately making you an anti-Semite, because what other group of people do you say it's not all right for them to be, to pursue their self-determination? Right.
I don't hate Jews. I just hate it that they would have their own state.
Right.
That's hard to defend.
Right. So that's like, okay, so you're racist. Like, I mean, okay, let's not call it anti-Zionism. You're a racist. All right. I mean, but it is, of course, anti-Semitic because you are essentially you're essentially targeting, singling out the Jews. It's because they're Jewish. Why does it bother you that Zionism exists politically because it's the Jewish party. You know, it's the Jewish political party. Like it would, the same movements being led by not that I could think of any off the top of my head, but say a Pacific Island movement of something similar, or an indigenous, or the land back movement in North America, does not get the same reception as Zionism.
Why? Why do you think that is?
Because they're not Jews.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but you used a word there that is, or a term that's particularly trafficked on the left, and that's the indigeneity concept. And so that is like, we're getting into, I think, kind of the heart of at least the modern iteration of anti-Zionism is rooted, I would say, in critical theory, that it's the white. If you're white, if you are wealthy, if you are Western, you can kind of add on to those.
Yeah.
You are at the top of the pyramid, but which actually in critical theory puts you at the bottom. Like you're the worst.
Right.
And so the more oppressed you are, the more value and more purchase you have.
Right.
But the Jewish people, they defy that because you are an indigenous people to the land of Israel. You have been oppressed.
We were never considered white.
Right. Until it's convenient.
But that was the whole, why were we ran out of every European country prior to World War II? Or, we weren't European. We weren't Polish enough. We weren't Ukrainian. We were the Jews of that area, but we were never a part of that area. We were always othered within Europe. Yep. So the whole idea that we're European colonizers is completely ridiculous. When they tell us go back to Poland, that's like where they told us that we need to get out because we're not Polish. Like,
well, exactly. Because when you read histories of the Holocaust, I just read one recently by Laurent Ries, and he makes this point that in Germany and in Poland at that time during the war, they were saying, go back to Palestine, go back to the land. Right. And so you do. Right. And now go back to Poland. It's like, you can't make these people
win.
happy.
You can't win. No. And that's part of, it's wild to see it because it's literally an unexplainable obsession. And like, people don't even realize that they're like infected with this obsession. Like I had this one woman. Well, we'll save this for later in the conversation.
Okay. I'm eager to hear that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that muddies the waters for a lot of people is that there are people on the left propagating anti-Zionism who do so as Jews.
Yeah.
And for Mr. Smith living here in the Midwest, and he watches the news and he sees these, Jews for Palestine and things like that.
Yeah.
Suddenly the argument that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism is questioned in his mind because, well, how could it be anti-Semitism when there's Jewish people advocating for anti-Zionism? So let's talk about this term as a Jew.
Yeah.
Okay. What is as a Jew, and how would you diagnose why you see Jewish people campaigning against Israel on college campuses and in city streets?
So the as a Jew is the Jewish individual who uses their Jewish heritage to uplift their opposing position from what is considered the mainstream Jewish position. So, for example, let's say talking about human aid and during the primary fighting in Gaza, right? They would get up. As a Jew would literally get up and say, "Well, as a Jew, I believe that they should be putting more humanitarian aid into Gaza. Like, I'm setting myself apart from the rest of the Jews by saying, no, look at me. I am a Jew. And as a Jew, I am agreeing with your values or what your narrative is saying. And so they're basically weaponizing their Jewish identity to basically hop on the bandwagon, you know? And I think that it's a part of the exile condition where it's a survival tactic. They don't want to be other. No one wants to be othered. And so, and we've seen this time and time again throughout Jewish history, where a group of Jews will go, no, we're like you. We agree with you. We want your values, or we don't believe in the land of Israel. We believe, or we see ourselves as purely whatever nation we're in or whatever movement we're in. Yeah. And every single time, as soon as that movement or that government or regime would be done with them spreading their message, or they've achieved their goals, they were literally the first ones thrown in the gulags, in the firing lines, with the firing squads.
They can discard the Jew once he's outlived his purpose.
Right, and you've seen it. You saw it with the Bundist movement and world. You saw it with the German Jews. You saw it with who else? There was. You see, and so you see it. With the Marxist movement or the socialist movement or when the socialist movement took over Russia, right? They were powered by Jews who were trying to get out from under the oppression of the czars.
Right.
And so,
which was real oppression,
right? It was real oppression, and 100%. I mean, the pogroms and all of this stuff was horrible. Tons of thousands of Jews would be killed and brutally murdered in their homes, and so you see it. It's so similar to today. So these Jews said, no, we're going to apply for universal values that will make life better for everyone. And thus, we will be included in these values, and our life will be better as well.
On paper, that works.
Right. So
until you factor in human nature.
Exactly. And then when they look around and they go, well, we still got Jews here. Like, we got rid of the czars, but you're still Jewish.
Yeah.
So those Jews who headed the socialist movement in the USSR, they were literally the first ones executed right after Stalin or Lenin or where, I can't even remember off the top of my head who was first. They got their way. They were thrown into gulags. They were executed, and that was the end of that.
Well, let's talk about back to the fundamental question of the as a Jew mentality, because do you think you're kind of, and correct me if I'm misrepresenting you, but you're saying it is a form of buying into the prevailing narrative because the idea is, or at least the thought is, it'll bring protection for them. But wouldn't you say these people, a lot of them, they're not doing it maybe out of a motivation for protection consciously? They're they're true believers. They really believe in the anti-Zionist leftist message.
But so they really believe in the universalist message, and they believe that everyone has the same values that they have. So if I want peace and equality for all, then obviously everyone else around me also does, right?
which is how we all think. I mean, to a degree, we all think everybody would want what I want.
But that's just not the reality. I mean, we're talking about an entire civilization of people that do not think the way we think.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want to have your way of life, and they don't want to live next to your way of life. And it, it's just, I mean, especially after October 7th, I mean, 1,200 people were killed in a population of 9 million. That was proportionally comparable to having had close to 40,000 people die on 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge amount of the population, and a majority of those people were the left, the progressive left-leaning two-state, demanding Israelis who literally the entire families were butchered. These families would spend weekends along the Gaza border, flying kites with Palestinians, trying to interact, trying to build bridges. I mean, part of, Israel has the most nonprofits per capita in all of the world.
I believe that.
And I mean, so many Israelis are constantly working to create coexistence with the Palestinian population. And, you kind of see where you would start to believe if we just, if everyone would just get along, we could make this work. We could make this work. But the fact is that the majority of them did not want peace. They don't want to exist with Israel. It's from the river to the sea, pre-48. They don't want Israel at all, and they don't want any Jews around either. And they admit it time and time again. And I can't believe that after October 7th, when all of these people who have had their olive branches out for so long were massacred in their own homes, and then there's still a narrative within the Jewish communities in Israel and in the diaspora where we talk as if we just work towards coexistence, then they would stop trying to kill us.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
But because you're operating on two completely different worldviews.
Yeah.
So we've zoomed, and I think an example like in America pre 10/7 would be the Women's March in Washington, where you had a lot of Jewish women involved, and then it essentially breaks apart. My understanding is essentially breaks apart when it's revealed that we want to empower women unless you're a Zionist woman, because then you're beyond the pale, and so the left did a segregation essentially, and they pushed out Jewish Zionist women.
Right.
So you see that even pre 10/7. But let's zoom out. So we've been really focused, really zoomed into the current time.
Yeah.
This is a question that a lot of evangelical Christians have.
Okay.
And I want to address the flip side of this from maybe a Jewish perspective on evangelicals. But I get this all the time. Why is it that not just in the last 5-10 years, but historically in the United States, let me say it this way, the majority of the Jewish community tends to vote left of center, which from an evangelical perspective is counter to their own interests when it comes to anti-Semitism, but the state of Israel. Can you shed some light on that? Why does the Jewish community tend to vote that way? And maybe you can shed a little light on where the fact that the Jewish people are not a block. There is variety within that.
So I would say, well, first things first, the biggest Jewish denomination in America is the Reform movement.
And just for the audience, for Christians, Shlomi's not saying Reformed. They're not Calvinist Jewish people. It's Reform. There we go.
The Reform movement. And so historically, the Reform movement, I think it was back in 1886 or somewhere around there, 1885, they had the Pittsburgh Platform, which was basically denouncing their Jewish peoplehood. And they were just basically, we're a religion. We're no longer people. We're not pursuing, peoplehood like in the land of Israel. We are home in America. America is our new Zion, and which actually they reverted later in 1935 with the Columbus platform. But it was a move that was trying to make them more, make them more American, show that they're part of the greater collective.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been basically and like I said, that push towards universal values has been a part of, I would say, the reform movement, and I would say later the conservative movement. I'm not as well read up on the conservative movement yet. I've been doing more reading on the reform movement. You would see it just throughout all their different positions, all the different shifts that the reform movement had taken on. Whereas to this point is the focus for reform rabbis now isn't in liturgy or in text, but it's in social justice and community values. So they don't even really engage with it. I mean, not, and I'm not saying about every reform rabbi, but the focus of the reform movement is tikkun olam. Yeah. Basically to heal the world. And again, it's a universal thing. If we heal the world, we're a part of it. We make it better for everyone, and it'll be good.
It's a very human-centered.
It's very human-centered
view,
yeah.
And it's I think from an outsider's perspective, having known many Reformed Jewish people, there is a downplay. That's probably putting it mildly, of the scriptures as divinely inspired. It's not
Absolutely.
An authority, and therefore, what do you have left? You have tradition that's absent any authority behind it. Wouldn't you say that's part of what feeds that? Is the further you move from, in my view, the further you move from the scriptures being the word of God, and therefore He is the authority in His word.
Yeah.
The more humanistic you're going to get.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And that's why you have after the reform. So like if you're going to like, in my, coming from my Orthodox background, the way I kind of rank Judaism, and I'm sorry, Jewish listeners. Like I'm just telling you how my brain works. I'm not saying one's right or wrong or anything like that. This is just how it goes in my brain. You got the ultra Orthodox, the Haredim on the top. They're literally doing everything to the letter of the law, obsessively down to the last detail, maybe losing intention along the way or missing some other kind of other flavors that we pick up on when we're not too obsessed with the small details. But they're taking it very, very literally, which is great. Then you've got, modern Orthodoxy, which kind of brings orthodoxy into modern living, and then conservative Judaism. Now, conservative Judaism, I think, is kind of disappearing. I think it's kind of falling between. People are they're basically what was considered modern Orthodox, or they fall more into reform.
Okay.
So like what the conservative with the Masorti, like the Masorti movement in Israel, which is the comparable to the conservative movement here, is more of what the conservative movement used to be, where it was like traditional values and then just applying it more modernly, more even more so than modern Orthodoxy. But that's kind of why modern Orthodoxy is absorbing the conservative movement, because it keeps to that if like for the conservatives who want to make sure that they're keeping to tradition and keeping the traditional values and just applying them to a modern, in a modern way, modern Orthodoxy ends up being more appealing, and then a lot of the conservative synagogues now, which I think in my head is kind of like what Reformed congregations were 25 years ago. And,
Yeah.
you know, so like, it's all kind of like shifting. And now you've got humanistic Judaism, which comes, you know, after Reform, which after conservative, which is completely removing, it's like atheistic Judaism.
Yeah.
You know, right. So,
And so that maps, I would say, and you can correct me, but I would say that generally the spectrum you've just laid out of the movements within Judaism also fairly accurately maps out politically, doesn't it? Like if you meet a Haredi man, you probably know where he stands on a lot of political things.
Right.
And if you meet a Reform rabbi, you probably know where he or she falls politically.
Correct.
So that's really interesting to a lot of evangelicals. I think just for the sake of you know, hitting it from both sides.
Yeah.
For the evangelical Christian, evangelical has actually, I think, lost a lot of its meaning because it's become such a political term. It's more a demographic that political strategists coach their candidates to target with certain messaging than it means something theological, which I find regrettable. But with evangelicals, we do vote very dependably conservative. And that, you know, I think especially in the 70s, 80s is where that comes from, the moral majority, Jerry Falwell, things like that. But the pro-life movement, I think particularly was a catalyst for that, the rise of Ronald Reagan and things like that. I would say for myself, like, as I consider my politics is downstream, and I think it should be, from my theology. So I believe certain things about what God has said. I believe what God has said, and I believe it's literal. And therefore, there are certain things I'm going to believe politically because they're downstream from that.
Right.
And I think that's for a lot of evangelicals.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it makes sense. And I think it's totally fair for your religious beliefs to reflect your political beliefs. But I would say this is where I end up calling myself libertarian, because I don't believe that my political beliefs that stem from my religious beliefs should affect your beliefs or your political beliefs. You should still be able to move freely. So you know what I mean? So yes, do I believe in an abortion? We could get into that whole conversation also, but it's not no, guys. Oh wait, now I have to say it. So now, guys, okay, no, I am not. I'm not pro late term abortion, and obviously like rape and incest and stuff like that. Should be exceptions to the rule, but otherwise, a life is a life, and so now that since I brought it up, I had to, and we're talking that's politics. Right. I had to clarify my stance on that.
No, it's good. I want to. We just have a few minutes left. I want to swing then to the right, because I know you're concerned. We're both concerned about anti-Semitism on both sides.
Yeah.
Personally, I take it as more of an affront on the right, because these are people who at least profess to be conservative, and I find that I don't think being anti-Semitic and conservative can go together, or they should. But that's why it's so grievous to me to see it.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the right, whereas on the left, it's not racial. You don't hear a lot. I mean, generally, you're not hearing those Jews. You're hearing those Zionists.
Right.
Very much in political terms.
They're trying to paint it in strictly political terms, keeping things in the identity politics, oppressor versus oppressed, and all of that. Amazingly, we are the white oppressors on the colonizers, the colonial settlers on the left.
Yep.
But on the right, we are the race subverters. We
Yep.
are the, we're the threat to Christian nationalism. We're the threat to capitalism. We're the socialists. What I've been hearing a lot is how we own a lot of these adult sites, and it's just like these crazy rumors. They're like, that Jew owns this site and that Jew owns that site, and it's like complete like garbage. But like people are just like, yeah, I saw it on BuzzFeed, and so it must be true.
Or
like
Tucker Carlson says
Tucker
it, so
Carlson,
it
right?
must be true.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson repeated it, and then and then Tucker Carlson the next day says, "I never said that," but like, but it's out there now, and people just repeat it. No one cares to check. No one uses their brain. We have all of knowledge at our fingertips. With AI, we've made knowledge even more accessible because it can organize and present the knowledge to us now. So it's, but yet the more access we get to this knowledge, it seems the dumber people become.
It is a weird thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the right, because here's my contention that being conservative, and this would also, I think, certainly bleed into libertarianism. Being conservative or libertarian, it prioritizes the individual. Especially in I would say Judeo-Christian terms, being made in the image of God, and therefore flowing out of that having certain rights. We see that in the Declaration that was in the founders' mind as they're writing. And with that comes individual responsibility.
Right.
And so a conservative, and I'll just talk conservatives. So a conservative would not say the whole system is rigged, burn it down, or it's a systemic, it's what's interesting is on both sides you hear about systemic systems. That's redundant, but
right. Systemic issues. Yeah.
And they're insurmountable. And on the one hand, on the left, it's Israel. On the right, it's the Jews. Whereas being conservative says you don't blame anybody else for your problems. You take responsibility.
Right.
And so this isn't original to me, but what a lot of people who study this have been talking about is this is the horseshoe effect, where the far left and the far right, they agree on nothing until it comes to the Jewish people.
Right.
That's where they meet in the middle.
Right.
And so we're seeing that just like boots on the ground.
Yeah.
You are documenting through Jewish Frontline, you're documenting and pushing back against anti-Semitism, all stripes. But what are you seeing on the right? What does that look like practically? So
on the right, I mean, that it comes back to like a lot of the old anti-Semitic tropes, like just, of Jewish, Jewish power and dual loyalty and, all the narratives of Bibi controlling Trump and all the Jews in Senate are loyalists to Israel, and of course Jews killed Jesus and were the synagogue of Satan, and so I mean old anti-Semitic blood libels are recirculating. Just about all the old timey tropes are making a comeback from the right. And Hitler's become super popular again. On the internet, you'll often see him being referenced as the Austrian painter, or the painter, and they'll say, oh, the painter was right, this, that, whatever. So I mean, in classrooms, you see, or in neighborhoods, usually with graffitis, you'll see swastikas and just like, the classic anti-Semitic, like, so when Jews think about anti-Semitism, mostly they, like, for a long time, they really just thought about anti-Semitism on the right. They thought neo-Nazis and they, they think about the Skokie March and stuff like that.
Which, by the way, is one of the reasons Dennis Prager points to for why so many Jewish Americans have voted left
yeah.
as a reaction against that. I found that interesting.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no. So, so it's always been, so within Jewish communities, it has always kind of been painted as like, it's like a fringe right issue. It's coming from neo-Nazis and white supremacy and stuff like that. And it really wasn't being acknowledged, on the left. David Bernstein, wrote, oh, there you go. Woke Antisemitism. Yeah. So he talks about how it really started showing up on the left back in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s.
Yep.
You know, and it really, and even till, I would say even now, a lot of people have a hard time recognizing it. And the left one, it's basically been what I would say the rise of anti-Semitism more recently in the left contributed more to the overall anti-Semitism in our country than any right-wing anti-Semitism has over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, the last attacks on Jews, like the murders and the murder in Washington, the shooting in Chicago, the firebomb attack in Colorado, the Colorado attack was also more Islamist motivated, right. But and the Temple Beth Israel attack last month here, also, you know, this is all everyone's screaming free Palestine when Gonzalez, who's a leftist, is screaming free Palestine along with Mohammed Takbir Allah whatever from Dearborn, and they're both screaming, you know, the same thing. Then it's not, you know, I mean, their movement has been hijacked by Islamic terrorists, but they have more blood on their hands than any white nationalist marching or spray painting or you know, hailing Hitler on a bus or whatever has in the last 30, 40, 50 years. So so I think it's kind of crazy. I think it's maybe a shell shock, kind of, you know, that Jews have to kind of get over the fact that the anti-Semitism really is coming very strongly from the left right now. Yep. And I think, just generally speaking, that Jews have to stop being loyal just based on party lines. Like, we have to start looking at things from a Jewish first perspective. And, you know, I think American first people won't like hearing that. But the fact of the matter is that American Jews, when we build for the betterment of our community here in America, it makes America better.
It does.
And so when we are Jewish first, that is essentially American first.
Go to any major American city, and go into a hospital, and there's a good chance that the whole hospital or a good chunk of the wing or something is going to be a Jewish name,
right?
Art galleries, museums, university buildings. You know, when the Jewish people thrive in a society, it benefits the society, and when they don't, it really spells, I think, civilizational collapse. And
you saw that, I mean, before the civil rights movement, all these Jewish hospitals, these Jewish schools, universities, then became the most sought after places, you know, to be a part of. So when Jews build for Jews, everyone benefits. Yep. And I don't think every minority group can say that for themselves. So are we superior in a certain way? Sure. We're really good at building community infrastructure that helps everyone, you know.
Well, Shlomi, you and I have talked about this before, but I think one of the things people have a problem with is that the Jewish people are the epitome of the American dream. And what I mean by that is your people have been oppressed more than any people in human history. The Jewish people who came from Europe to America in the last century, the vast majority were impoverished.
Yeah.
And yet they worked hard.
Mhm.
They built communities. They did what America stands for. And surprise, surprise, they succeeded.
Right.
And now, as people enjoying the fruits of that and benefiting the society because of those fruits, now they're viewed as the problem. And you see that individually. I think the right people on the right look at that and they get angry about that. I think on the left, you see that at a state level. So where pre-1967, the Six-Day War, Israel, and you correct me if you disagree here, but my take on this is pre-1967 in the Six-Day War, Israel was still the David to the Arab Goliath. But when Israel wins that war against all odds, it's like, okay, this is now the second time or actually the third. You've got the Sinai campaign, you've got the Independence War, now you've got the Six-Day War, and now in a lot of on the left, the shift happens where now the state of Israel, in their view, has become the Goliath to the Arab David. And so when you're not a victim, whether it's at an individual level or a state level, the far right and the far left end up hating you.
Right.
That's my thesis. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think I agree to an extent. I think it's impossible to ever call Israel the Goliath in the situation. Besides for their military superiority, it's Goliath compared to the Palestinian.
Well, I don't believe that. I'm saying in their view, you become powerful.
Right. But in the grand scheme of Arab nationalism, pan-Arab nationalism, I mean, even still, like, we're still a speck of the on the Middle Eastern map, and for anyone to pretend that Israel isn't anything but a living miracle every single day that it exists, I mean, they're kidding themselves.
Yep.
I think Israel can become independent, of American support. I know America doesn't want that because Israel's worth the tens of billions more than what they
benefit so much.
Right.
So
I was looking it up. So just to rebuild. So I remember how Mark Rubio was saying, "Oh, we give them $3.8 billion, but we got 10 point something back in intelligence every year." He wasn't kidding when if you try to play around with ChatGPT, ask it to, what logistics, what does it look like for America to rebuild that intelligence infrastructure in the Middle East comparable to what they are getting from Israel, that alone is worth up to $50 billion every single year. So, I mean, I think that should, right away shut down any arguments about it. But also the parts of the contract for that aid is that Israel respends it with U.S. military contractors. So a significant part of that is going back into U.S. economy.
We're not just handing them a blank check,
right,
and saying, "Here you go, have a nice life." They're reinvesting that, in us.
And so America's getting this on huge savings. Plus, the money is going back into U.S. economy. I mean, can Israel walk away from America and be okay? I think with enough technological development, they can. If they hone in on their laser beam systems and they don't need missiles to reload the Iron Dome, then they can really become independent of America, and it would be a really sad thing for America to happen. But I think I lost what point I was trying to make with this. Because they're right. Oh yeah, and so the left view of the leftist Israeli view of we're now the Goliath. I think it does exist. I think it's absurd because that's a very small way of thinking. There is still pan-Arab nationalism. There's still the millions of Muslims, billions of Muslims worldwide who still believe in rebuilding a caliphate, a Sharia law, and it's just it's so naive to constantly return back to a position of well, maybe if we just adjust ourselves a little bit this way, or maybe if we just try to coexist a little bit harder, when it's literally, it hasn't even been 3 years and people are already talking like, oh, well, maybe if we just fix ourselves because if I stop being a little less Jewish, then maybe they won't want to kill me so much. I don't know. It's like, it's so like suicidal. I don't know. Like, it's just like, yeah, you're Jewish. Like, just get over it, and no one's going to like you, and you just got to do what you got to do. And that's what I think Israel just has, we have to stop being worried about what the world thinks, what the world response is going to be. Israel's got to do Israel, period. At the end of the day, they've got to be the most self-centered little brats in that regard, because like no one else gives a crap about their well-being. Like, everyone will say whatever they want to undermine their well-being, and it's just, people have to stop. Like, we need some good leaders over there that don't worry about and just do what they got to do.
Well, I want to wrap up with this, Shlomi.
All right, yeah.
No, this is good, but you look civilizationally at those, or I should say historically at civilizations, and how they've treated the Jewish people. And I'm not even talking about their relationship with the state of Israel. I'm saying even with the Jewish diaspora. There is a theological truth there, I think, that, back in the Abrahamic covenant, God says to Abram, but that it's reiterated to Isaac and Jacob. So it's a national promise, that God is going to treat in a reciprocal manner the nations for how they treat Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. When you look at Assyria, Babylon, Egypt, Persia, you can just go down the line, Greece, Rome, all of which have negatively, they've cursed, in the biblical language, they've cursed your people.
Right.
Where are they today? They're not. They're not here. We go and we look at the artifacts in museums, and so there is. I think if we started off very zoomed in, and now we've zoomed out a little bit. Now, if we zoom out about as far as you can, and you look at this from a biblical perspective, for my view anyway, is that it is sure, it's an economic liability for the United States to tolerate anti-Semitism and hatred of the Jewish state. It's not good for us in that way. But from a theological perspective, it is the death knell for a country to treat its Jews in a bad way, as we've seen. As you look at the landscape, in 30 seconds, I know this is going to be hard.
Yeah.
What do you think the future is going to be for American Jews?
Israel. Israel. And I wrote about this recently in on my Time of Israel blog. The Jewish story is in Israel, and if the Jewish diaspora is not actively being a part of that Jewish story, meaning trying to every day, waking up and working to strengthen Jewish life in the diaspora, if you're just living passively, you're going to disappear. During the Exodus, the Chazal explained that 80% of the Jews stayed in Egypt. They didn't leave with the Exodus.
And this is according to Jewish tradition?
Jewish tradition, okay. To Jewish commentary. And that's because a lot of them were comfortable. A lot of them were unsure of what, was on the other side of the desert. There was no plan. There was no clear map. There was no definite answer to anything. 80% of the Jews stayed in Egypt. But the story goes on into the desert. We never hear about 80% of that population again. 20%, which now becomes the Jewish nation, goes on to carry the story forward. And we're going to see it again. We're going to see it again now with every exile and return from exile, there has always been a portion that stays. And you can stay, but you have to actively be part of the Jewish story here. And is that going to be sustainable in the next 5 years, 15 years? I don't know. I don't know. I voted for Trump twice. Or 3 times, right?
Yeah.
I voted for I voted for him 3 times. And I don't know that I would vote for JD Vance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I trust JD Vance. I think the Christian national narrative and push is also a problem for the Jewish community. And from a Jewish first perspective, I don't trust the left or the right now.
Yeah. That's a scary place to be.
Yeah.
Well, Shlomi, I hope you're wrong.
Yeah.
but I think even biblically, you're right. I think the persecution that Jewish people face is increasingly going to become the catalyst for the return.
Yeah.
But until then, let's make sure we're working together on this. Well, Shlomi, I want to thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Gesher. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Gesher, a ministry outreach production of FOI Equip, your free resource for learning and engaging with the scriptures from a Jewish perspective. To learn more, visit foiequip.org. And for more information about Ty, visit foi.org/Perry. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Shalom.